Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there is a ton of news stories to get into today, so let's talk about the world of AEW. Now, there were some big events last night, not actually for All Elite Wrestling. There was a big event for AAA. It was TripleMania last night, and it was New Japan Pro Wrestling's Resurgence event. And you would be saying to yourself then, okay, Owen, what does that have to do with AEW? Why are there some big AEW news stories for events promoted by AAA and by New Japan Pro Wrestling? Well, the reason why is because there were AEW wrestlers involved in both events, and also there were lots of teases about this forbidden door being smashed wide open by talent from AAA, from New Japan, and by AEW wrestlers themselves. So we'll start off talking about the AAA Mega Championship match at TripleMania last night, because of course it features the AEW World Champion himself, Kenny Omega. Now, last night's AAA TripleMania XXIX event featured a number of highly anticipated matches, and one of the biggest, obviously, was the battle for the AAA Mega Championship between the current champion Kenny Omega and the challenger, also an AEW contracted talent, Andrade El Idolo. Now, this match was announced way ago. It was actually announced prior to Andrade even signing with All Elite Wrestling. And since then, fans across the world of professional wrestling have seen Kenny Omega really dominate the world of pro wrestling. He was the Impact World Champion, AAA Mega Champion, and the AEW World Champion. But after his loss to Christian Cage this past Friday, rather, on AEW Rampage, there's been a feeling that last night could have been the night that Kenny Omega lost another championship, this time being the AAA Mega Championship, to Andrade El Idolo. Now, Andrade has had his eyes set on the AAA Mega Championship ever since he stepped foot inside of an AEW ring, and after a lot of back and forth in what was a pretty epic match last night at TripleMania, with a surprise guest, it was finally Kenny Omega who was able to emerge victorious and retain his AAA Mega Championship. Now, the big surprise in this match wasn't that Kenny Omega retained the championship, even though to some it was quite surprising. The big surprise was the appearance of two-time WWE Hall of Famer and recently released by WWE. You can see him in the picture right there. The Nature Boy, Ric Flair, accompanied his soon-to-be son-in-law, because of course Andrade is engaged to Charlotte Flair, to the ring for the match. Now, Omega wasn't alone out there. Instead of being accompanied by the likes of the Young Bucks or Don Callis, this time Kenny Omega was accompanied by Conan. Now, Ric Flair actually ended up getting physically involved in the match. After a thrilling match, Ric Flair entered the ring. He stopped Kenny Omega from using the AAA Mega Championship as a weapon. And then Flair and Andrade started trading chops on Kenny Omega. This was then followed by Flair hitting chops on Conan too. Then, to the surprise of many, Andrade got Kenny Omega in the figure four, and Flair wasn't going to miss out on using his signature submission, so he locked Conan in the figure four at the same time, to a massive reaction from the crowd. Now, it looked like at this point that Andrade was on his way to winning the AAA Mega Championship, but thanks to a referee distraction, Kenny Omega hit Andrade with the AAA Mega Championship bout and followed it up with a one-winged angel to get the victory, and that was all she wrote. Omega would get the pin and retain his championship. Now, of course, it remains to be seen if Andrade is going to get a rematch here, because, of course, Kenny Omega cheated. That darned heel, Kenny Omega, cheated and retained his championship. I thought the match was good. I thought the match was very good. I thought it was a lot of fun. I do agree with some people. I've seen some people not criticizing Andrade. I don't think that's fair, but I have seen some people say that Andrade looks a bit slower, shall we say. I think that's a byproduct. He is obviously bigger, I think, than he was previously in WWE. I mean, you can kind of see it there in the image that Andrade looks to be he's bulked up quite a bit. He physically looks to be a lot bigger right now, and obviously he still works a relative Lucha Libre style. He can still do some unbelievable stuff in the ring, but it does look like, it kind of reminds me of, say, like an Eddie Guerrero. If you look at Eddie Guerrero, throughout his career, as he got physically bigger and bigger and bigger, he was still able to do a lot of the stuff he was able to do early on in his career, but his matches changed. The high pacing of the matches changed drastically. For instance, Eddie Guerrero working in WWE wasn't the same kind of Eddie Guerrero that was working in ECW. Now, obviously, there are factors in that. There was obviously Guerrero's substance abuse. There was obviously the car wreck that he had kind of slowed him down a little bit. I think Kurt Angle even said that wrestling Eddie Guerrero was different after some of his issues that he had. But I don't know if that's the same with Andrade. I think his work is evolving. I think if they had or if they do have more matches in the future, Omega and Andrade, and I think they will. I think if they have more matches in the future, their matches will get better. But I thought the match was what it was expected to be. And look, Ric Flair appearing was a massive surprise. Of course it was. It was a huge surprise. I think nobody was expecting Flair to appear at an event this soon after he was released by WWE. I don't know what that means in terms of contract and non-compete clauses. I know a lot of people will be saying, wait a minute, I thought he had to wait a 90-day non-compete clause. I thought he had to wait 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, however many days. I don't know that situation. The reason I say I don't know is because I don't know if because Ric Flair wasn't on a talent contract as far as I'm aware. He was on a Legends contract or an Ambassadors contract. I don't know if that's different to a standard talent contract. I mean, even the non-compete clauses are different from main roster contracts to NXT contracts. So logic would state that a Legends contract or an Ambassadors contract, whatever Ric Flair had, would be different in comparison to a standard main roster talent contract. I don't know. Maybe he'll have the same 90-day non-compete clause. Maybe it will be 30 days. Maybe it will be 60 days. Maybe it's nothing at all. Maybe that's why he was able to appear at TripleMania last night. Or maybe it's just the case of it's Ric Flair. And Ric Flair has kind of sometimes taken this mentality over the years when he's either in a disagreement with WWE or, for instance, when he was in TNA back in the day, Ric Flair will do what Ric Flair wants to do, and he doesn't care about the consequences. Now, he says that the way that it ended between him and WWE and Vince McMahon was amicable and mutual. Other reports say that wasn't the case. Other reports say that Vince McMahon and WWE decided to let Ric Flair go. Others say that Ric Flair requested his release. I would tend to lean into WWE probably, or Vince McMahon himself was upset in Flair going to Vince McMahon and being upset by how Charlotte Flair was booked and how he was booked and that kind of stuff. I don't know. But irrespective of what Flair can and can't do, he's just going to do what he wants because that's what he's always done. I remember back when Flair was still in TNA back in 2011, I think this was, whenever the Four Horsemen were inducted into the Hall of Fame. I think that was around 2011. And Flair was going to be inducted, and Bruce Pritchard even recalls this story on his podcast where basically he said, look, we had to figure something out and try and get a bit of a talent exchange going, because if we said to Ric Flair, you can't go to the Hall of Fame, Ric Flair will go to the Hall of Fame because that's what he does. He's Ric Flair. He doesn't care about what he can and can't do. So in terms of Flair getting physically involved in the match last night, I think it was interesting to see. If he goes to AEW, which we're going to talk about in a second because there are those rumors, I think this is what we'll kind of see of him. I don't know who he'll manage if he goes or when he goes to AEW. I pitched before, I think MJF would be a good person for Flair to manage. Obviously here, he was managing Andrade. He's got a family connection with him because he is going to be his future son-in-law in the future. But, of course, Andrade's already got a manager. He's got Chavo Guerrero. Chavo Guerrero only recently debuted in AEW. Previously had Vicky Guerrero. They made those changes because it obviously wasn't working out. But if Flair becomes available, it's within reason that Andrade would just go to Tony Khan and say, look, Ric Flair or Chavo Guerrero. No disrespect, but it's always going to be Ric Flair. Any single day of the week, it's going to be Ric Flair. So maybe this is a sign of things to come. Should Flair eventually sign with AEW, which of course is the rumor. But in terms of getting physically involved, I think, look, I have no issue in Ric Flair coming in the ring, doing a couple of chops, doing a right hand and locking in a figure four. That's relatively light for him. I don't want to see Ric Flair taking bumps. I don't want to see Ric Flair wrestling by any stretch of the imagination. The guy is 72 years old. I know it's 2021 and anything practically is possible this year. Sting's wrestling on TNT this week and he's in his 60s. So anything's possible. But given the health issues that Ric Flair has had, WWE wouldn't let anyone touch him. So why should AEW be any different in that aspect of things? I don't know. And I don't want to see Ric Flair wrestling. As far as, you know, being a manager, being at ringside, cutting a promo, maybe doing some chops, maybe doing a right hand, I have no problem with that. I have no problem with that because that's what's been going on since the beginning of time. And Ric Flair does have something to add. I know people will say, I have no interest in seeing Flair in AEW or anything like that, but there is something he could offer that company. There's no doubt about it. He's still Ric Flair at the end of the day. Now, speaking of Flair, as I mentioned, there are rumors that Ric Flair is expected to sign with All Elite Wrestling once he's legally able to do so. Now, in this week's Wrestling Observer newsletter, Dave Meltzer has reported that from what he's hearing, and as I always mention when it comes to Dave Meltzer, if he's talking about AEW, you know it's the truth. It is accurate 99% of the time, because if Dave Meltzer is talking about something within AEW, that means he's spoken to Tony Khan, because Tony Khan and Dave Meltzer are very close friends. So Dave Meltzer is reporting from what he's hearing, Ric Flair, quote, seems to be a lock to sign with AEW once he is legally able to do so. Now, Flair 72 requested his release from WWE and received it on August 3rd. The 16-time World Heavyweight Champion was reportedly unsatisfied with his daughter Charlotte Flair's booking and current direction with the company. Flair himself expressed displeasure with a previous angle he was involved in with Lacey Evans and Charlotte. Speaking to Ariel Helwani's MMA show in May, Flair noted that he didn't feel comfortable with the storyline that involved in being a romantic interest for Evans. He also noted that Charlotte herself didn't like the storyline either. Now, Flair re-signed a deal with WWE in 2020, and when there was a question about that happening, Flair said he didn't want to sign elsewhere if he was renewed. Flair and AEW's Tony Khan have a friendship, and Flair's future son-in-law, Andrade El Idolo, as I mentioned, is now with AEW after his release from WWE earlier this year. I believe, I might be wrong here, but I believe that Flair and Tony Khan's relationship probably comes from Conrad Thompson's previous friendship with Tony Khan. I know that those three, that's how they all know each other. It's either through Conrad, or Tony Khan knows Conrad because of Rick, or something like that. That's how it all works out. I think it might be Flair knew Tony Khan first, and then he got in touch with Conrad. Either way, they're all very, very close. Of course, Conrad Thompson is Ric Flair's son-in-law as well. So I think Flair will end up in AEW. As I've mentioned before, I know some people don't want to see him involved in AEW, but think about it from several points of view here. AEW's use of managers is very, very good. AEW's use of managers, whether it's Arn Anderson, Jake Roberts, Tully Blanchard, you name it, the list goes on and on. The managers that they've used has been very beneficial. It doesn't take away from the talent. It gets over the talent, even in a different aspect to something like Sting and Darby Allin. You know, Sting doesn't really do any talking. He's just there, just being backed up by Sting. Just having Sting in your corner makes Darby Allin feel like a bigger deal. And it's the same with Ric Flair. Ric Flair being in the corner of MJF or Andrade makes them feel like a bigger deal. Occasionally cut a promo. A manager doesn't have to always be a mouthpiece. Nowadays, we always assume that a manager is a mouthpiece. Sometimes he is, or they are, but sometimes they're just there as part of the presentation. That's what Ric Flair can be for whoever he manages in AEW. On the other side of things as well, that AEW has been associated with WCW. It's kind of inherited, I don't know, the past of WCW, primarily because of its relationship with Warner Media, being the first wrestling show to be back on TNT, moving to TBS, of course, as well, next year. All of that, there's been this connection with WCW. That's why you've had Eric Bischoff go back there. That's why you've had Sting go back there. That's why you've had Tully and Arn and all of these former WCW stars appear on AEW programming because of that. Again, like they're the next step from WCW. They're the revival of WCW, if you will. And Ric Flair plays a massive part in that. Ric Flair being on TNT like he was for Nitro. Even more than that, Ric Flair being on TBS like he was for Jim Crockett Promotions, WCW, Turner back in the day. That's a massive, massive win for AEW, who are embracing that WCW heritage. You don't get many more people associated with WCW than the Nature Boy himself, Ric Flair, former 16-time World Heavyweight Champion. So it feels like a natural fit that Flair would be back. Flair being back on TNT and TBS, that's a massive deal. It's a huge deal. And AEW would be naive to not pull that off. So I expect Ric Flair to come back. Flair, of course, was reportedly set to unveil the AEW World Championship at Double or Nothing in May of 2019. But health issues prevented that from happening, so Bret Hart ended up taking that spot instead. So Flair was at least booked at one point to appear on an AEW show, so it could happen again in the future. I expect that it will, and that's going to be very interesting to see how that one plays out. Now, we'll talk about New Japan Pro Wrestling Resurgence last night because we have a new IWGP United States champion where Hiroshi Tanahashi, New Japan Pro Wrestling legend, defeated AEW wrestler and former IWGP United States champion Lance Archer at Resurgence last night to win the US Heavyweight Championship. Now, this is certainly very, very interesting. Now, by defeating Lance Archer last night, he is the first man, now Tanahashi, to win every single championship in the history of New Japan Pro Wrestling, just once again emphasizing how much of a legend he is. Tanahashi also becomes the first Japanese wrestler to hold the championship as well. The victory for Hiroshi Tanahashi is just another career-defining victory for him, and he becomes the 6th ever man to hold the IWGP United States Heavyweight Championship. Now, after the conclusion of the match, Lance Archer congratulated him on the victory and told him that when Tanahashi ever does go to All Elite Wrestling, AEW, Archer wants to be the first man to face him over anyone else. Tanahashi's post-match promo, he doubled down on his return to the United States, saying that as its champion, he would be back soon. So Tanahashi here has teased a return to the United States and teased a appearance inside of an AEW ring. We had heard rumors previously that Jon Moxley wanted to face a top New Japan Pro Wrestling star at All Out this September. The rumor was that it was going to be Jon Moxley versus Hiroshi Tanahashi for the IWGP United States Heavyweight Championship. Now, that looks way, way more likely to me. I felt the reason at the time, a lot of people kind of questioned why Moxley sort of dropped the championship to Lance Archer. It felt very odd considering how strongly Jon Moxley is booked, especially in New Japan, but also in AEW. Now that all makes sense. Moxley dropped the championship to Archer so that Archer could drop it to Tanahashi, setting up that match between Moxley and Tanahashi at All Out for the IWGP United States Championship. So I think that match is pretty much confirmed. Now, Moxley did wrestle last night. He was involved in a tag team match with Yuji Nagata against the Good Brothers. We're going to be talking about that in today's Impact Wrestling news video. But I think it does set up something in the future. I could see a situation where we have another match between Moxley and Archer inside of an AEW ring. I think it'll probably be Archer versus Moxley, #1 contender for the IWGP United States Championship, with the winner facing Tanahashi at All Out. That then leads to Moxley versus Tanahashi at All Out, which is going to be a massive match on the show. So I think that's the direction that we're going in. I think we are going to get a Tanahashi AEW match, which I'm very excited about. So very, very exciting stuff there. But it might not be the only New Japan star to come over to AEW, because Jay White has also teased showing up in All Elite Wrestling. Now, last night at New Japan Pro Wrestling Resurgence, Jay White defeated David Finlay for the IWGP United States Never Openweight Championship, rather. Now, the match itself was kind of sabotaged by some activity that was going on nearby. This time it was a party that was blasting their music. There was lots of stuff like that, fireworks and music and all that going off last night. It was a massive pain. Nevertheless, Jay White won the match. Of course, both stars have been appearing regularly in Impact Wrestling as of right now. But after the match, Jay White cut a promo, and you know what a great promo he cuts. He cut a great promo on Tomohiro Ishii after the match, and he also teased showing up in AEW too. Now, he also ruled himself out of the G1 this year, which was to be expected. To be honest with you, New Japan is a bit of a mess right now in Japan. Over in the United States, it's actually quite strong. You've got people like Jay White, you've got people like David Finlay, you've got people like Moxley, you've got the Good Brothers, you've got, of course, we'll talk about Will Ospreay in a second. All of the sort of foreign stars that would make their trips over to Japan, because of the state of the country right now and the state of emergency and the situation with COVID, basically, they're just kind of saying, look, we're not going to go over there anymore. We're just not going to travel. We feel more comfortable being here. We feel more comfortable wrestling for New Japan Strong. And the show was called Resurgence last night, and it kind of did feel like it. It felt like a bit of a resurgence, because on the United States side of things, New Japan is going pretty strong. It's got great talent. It's got great matches. On the Japanese side of things, it's a bit of a mess because there's still a massive state of uncertainty right now in Japan. So Jay White's not going to be in the G1. Lots of names aren't going to be in the G1 this year, and it's because they don't want to travel. Now, I think Jay White showing up in AEW is what a lot of people want to see. I think his work in Impact Wrestling recently has been good. They've teased Jay White versus Kenny Omega a couple of times now. Impact have. But of course, Impact won't have Kenny Omega anymore, because Kenny Omega is no longer the Impact World Champion. He lost the championship to Christian Cage. So if that Kenny Omega and Jay White match happens, it would have to happen inside of an AEW ring. Now, it is, of course, possible, very possible, that Kenny Omega wins the Impact World Championship back at All Out. I still think we could see a situation where Christian Cage versus Kenny Omega becomes for both the AEW and the Impact World Championship. I don't know that to be the case, but I still think that's probably going to happen. So maybe we'll see Jay White versus Kenny Omega inside of an Impact ring, but let's face it, more eyeballs will be watching if it happens inside of an AEW ring. It will have a better crowd because it'll be inside of a bigger arena too. So that's very exciting as well. Finally, talking about New Japan Pro Wrestling Resurgence last night, of course, Will Ospreay returned last night. Will Ospreay returned to New Japan Pro Wrestling at the Resurgence event on Saturday and proclaimed himself to be the real IWGP World Heavyweight Champion. Now, Ospreay said that although he was now medically cleared to return, of course, he had a neck injury, but he is now medically cleared to return, he would not be returning to action in the upcoming 2021 G1 Climax tournament or competing for the main New Japan Pro Wrestling units, like the likes of Jay White, like other names. He's sticking to performing in America. Instead, Will Ospreay plans to appear every single week on New Japan Pro Wrestling Strong and defend his version of the IWGP United. I always say that, IWGP World Heavyweight Championship on that show. Now, the British wrestler reminded fans that he was never pinned or submitted for the title and was therefore the rights holder for said championship. Ospreay also accused New Japan Pro Wrestling Management of favoritism, pointing out that Jon Moxley was allowed to keep his IWGP United States Championship despite not traveling to Japan due to the pandemic. Unlike Moxley, though, Ospreay was forced to vacate his championship after suffering a neck injury back in May. Now, Ospreay suffered the injury on night 2 of wrestling Donatku, where he successfully defended his championship against Shingo Takagi. In the aftermath of Ospreay's injury, Taki defeated Okada at Dominion to win the IWGP Championship. Now, it was a strong promo by Will Ospreay last night. He also teased, it must be said, like several other people, possibly appearing in AEW as well. So the fact that he name-dropped Jon Moxley, of course, who was there last night, has led, again, some people to say, well, maybe, at All Out, maybe we see Tanahashi versus Lance Archer for the United States Championship, and maybe we actually see Jon Moxley versus Will Ospreay for his version of the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship. What a story that would be. Tanahashi versus Archer and Moxley versus Ospreay. All Out may have just got a lot bigger. So that's very exciting. But look, guys, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on today's AEW news stories? Be sure to leave a comment below. I'll be sure to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about AEW, Impact Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, WWE, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved with the community. Drop a comment below. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really just help us out here on YouTube, get the rankings, and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestling News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right-hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.